Nope, this is good.
It's there's like
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Oh,
there you go.
there you go. Okay, that's it. Everybody can hear. Okay, we'll get started now. And I want to welcome everyone. Yesterday was April 15th, tax day. President Abraham Lincoln added a federal income tax with the Revenue Act of 1861 to help fund the Civil War. Taxes were based on assessments, not voluntary tax returns. The act was later repealed and held unconstitutional. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in 1913 and gave Congress the authority to tax all incomes. It took until 1955 for the April 15th date to become the deadline for filing federal taxes. Today is April 16th, and the League of Women Voters of Northern Portage County will be presenting straightforward information about property taxes, bond issues, and levies, how they work, and why they matter. They are necessary to fund essential services that we all depend on. And I'm April, president of the Northern Portage County League. Our mission is to promote democracy and empower voters. We host these democracy dialogues to educate about issues that are of concern to all our local communities. While we are experiencing political polarization, the League remains nonpartisan as we have for 105 years. We do not support or oppose any candidate or political party. Tonight, in our efforts to remain open and transparent to all voters, members of our League will present an overview of the property taxes, bond issues, and levies, and then introduce the panel. They will moderate the discussion and then take questions from the audience. Thank you to the residents for attending. Thank you for the panel of financial experts. Thank you to the student volunteers from Interact that will be taking your questions. And thank you to the members of the League of Northern Portage County who planned this democracy dialogue. Now for the heavy stuff. Let me introduce our Communications Outreach Director, who will present property taxes, bond issues, and levies. Here is Margaret Lading.
As April said, we have three sections of our presentation tonight. I'll start out with just basic background on bonds and levies. We're going to talk about the terminology that you see at the ballot box. We'll talk a little bit about the Ohio rules that govern levies and how all of this math lands in the property tax. Then we'll turn it over to another group member, Janice, who will do a moderated discussion with our expert panel. And then lastly, the questions and answers. If you have questions and answers, thank you. If you have questions, our friends from the Aurora High School Interact Club are here. Ladies, give us a wave. And they have note cards. So just raise your hand and they'll give you a note card. You can write down your question. The girls will collect those and deliver them to our moderator to read them out loud at the end so we can all hear the questions and answers that were asked. All right, bonds and levies. They're on the ballot, and May 6th is no exception. All across Ohio, everyone will have a chance to vote on Issue 2, which is a $2.5 billion public infrastructure bond levy. In our area, if you live in Aurora, the school district will have an item on the ballot, which is a renewal levy. If you live in Hiram Township, there will be an item on the ballot from the township, a replacement levy. So lots of terminology. We're often asked as voters to decide on these issues. It helps all of us to be informed. Start with the basics. A bond issue. What is it? A bond issue is asking voters permission to take on debt, to get a loan, to issue a bond for a specific period of time at a specific interest rate that'll be paid back. It's being used for a specific capital purpose. Usually you'll see this with relation to roads or bridges, water treatment plants,
A public school district could have a bond issue if they were building a new building or doing major renovations. It's very much infrastructure related, typically. Tax levies, on the other hand, are more about ongoing cost. This is operations and maintenance of public programs. You'll see them used for salaries and operating expenses at public schools, libraries, parks, health services, all the programs that benefit our community. Bond and levy funds that are locally approved are collected through property taxes. And who pays property taxes? Everyone pays property taxes. If you own your home, you're getting a tax bill. If you rent your home, your landlord has built in the property taxes to that rent. Every single person is paying property taxes. Let's talk a little bit more about levies, because we see more levies on the ballot, and we'll talk a little more later about why we see more levies on the ballot. But the language in the ballot that is used typically includes dollars and mills. Now, I moved to Ohio 2.5 years ago, and I had never seen mills on a ballot language. That's kind of special here in Ohio. So what is a mill? A mill is, think of it like a percent. It's $1 per $1,000 of your assessed property value. Okay, well, let's back up. Where does that start? It starts with your fair market appraised property value. And why is that? Because the Ohio Constitution says it has to be that way. We've been taxing property in Ohio since 1825, I found out while making this presentation. For 200 years, it has started with fair market value, and that's what the law tells us. So let's do a simple example. If I have a house that has a $100,000 fair market value, in Ohio, the rule is 35% of that will be its assessed value, and that's where the mill math comes in. So $1 for every 1,000 of assessed value means a 1 mill levy is going to turn into $35. All right, there will be math in this presentation. Stay with me. So levies, there's mills, there's dollars, and there's a bunch of rules that got passed back in the 70s that we still live with today. In 1976, the Ohio House passed House Bill 920. There are two big concepts from that are important. The first is, although they might talk about dollars and mills, levies can never actually collect more than the dollars that were shown to voters. So there's a millage in the ballot language, and that's the real millage based on the calculation at that time the levy was passed. But the levy is really fixed at the dollar rate that's shown. That'll be important later. If property values increase, if there becomes more value in a community, like homes are built, doesn't matter, the dollars are fixed because of House Bill 920. There's also kind of a flip side of that coin from back in the 70s, which is there's a concept called inside millage, which also exists. Now, inside millage does move with values. Ohio law says that up to 10 mills can be assessed by municipalities for basic city services. There's also a small portion of school funding that sort of functions like inside millage, and this came in later in the 80s when they invented the floor. Our experts could tell us more about that. But think of it as a small portion. Inside millage is based on mills. So if property values increased, that amount that's collected goes up. But the key part is inside millage is not even close to the bulk of your property tax bill. Depending on where you live, it's way less than 50%. And so the majority. So let's go back to that ballot language. I'm going to use a real example from Aurora. In 2023, we passed a new operating levy here. Walking around town, how you hear about it is typically in reference to its mills, a 5.9 mil operating levy. But what did the language really say? Well, it said all these words here on the left. But what's important about that language is this stuff on the right. What's being passed is $5.13 million annually. At the time, in 2023, that converted to 5.9 mils of the assessed value, because that's legally how mills are expressed. And then they helped us out with the math there and converted it into the appraised value. So in the ballot box, I can know a little more easily how much this might cost me. But it's the dollars that are fixed. So over time, effective millage is actually kind of changing in the background. Let's do a simple example and then we'll do a fun one. So a hypothetical school passes a new operating levy of 1 mil. I have my easy to calculate $100,000 house. I'm going to pay $35, just like when we were explaining what a mill is in the first year. But what about later? Because those levies, they're voted for a specific period of time. 5 years is pretty typical. What about year 3? Well, probably the county auditor will have reappraised my house by then, because by law, he has to. Every 3 years, he has to update the appraisal. Let's say everybody's appraisal goes up 10%, and we'll do it equally because that makes it a lot easier. Now my house is worth $110,000, but they can still only collect 35, right? So the effective millage in the background, it's not a 1 mil levy anymore, it's a 0.9 mil levy. And this will play out with the levy we just passed in Aurora in 2023, right? We all just lived the property revaluation. So we passed a $5.13 million levy. If my house is worth $500,000, that means I'm paying, my share of that is $1,035. If everybody's property values go up by 30%, which I think a lot of us are living that now, my appraised value is up, but my share of the property tax is still the same. The effective millage has gone down. After the levies are passed, they will have to be renewed, right? Because they've been passed for a certain amount of time. And when they come to be renewed, there's different language that we'll see at the ballot box as well. A renewal levy, the word renewal, means it's coming in at the same original dollar amount as it was passed. And it will even reference the original millage amount at the time it was passed, but the effective millage in the background is probably different because values will have changed since then. A renewal levy is already baked into your property tax bill because you're already paying it, right? It's a renewal. And because of House Bill 920, it's being renewed for the same dollar amount you already approved in the past. A replacement levy is a little bit different. That has to be for the same purpose, and it will reference the original millage amount, but that millage will be applied to the new, latest property tax values, sorry, not property tax, property appraised values that are in play. So that one's a little bit different. If the values have gone up, a little bit more will be collected. So each individual house, each levy that lives in that house's taxing entity district, the bonds, everything that applies is all going into the math. Start with our fair market value, multiply by 35%, figure out our inside mills, figure out our locally voted levies, but that's still not your property tax bill because there's coupons or discounts. What are those? Well, the state legislature gets to decide those. And there are several that exist now. The owner occupancy credit, if you live in your own home, you're getting a small discount. There are homestead exemptions if you meet certain criteria that the state sets. The state also decides how much they're going to give back in rebates, and you hear this a lot, especially as it's associated with school funding. There's also discounts for businesses, abatements, and other offsets. At the end of the day, that's what your property tax is. So why does it feel like there's so many levies? Well, it's really because those levies are fixed to the dollar amount. Once that becomes part of your base budget, the only way to continue that portion of your budget is to get it renewed. Growing communities does not increase the dollar amount, but it does increase the services that are needed. So you'll see schools coming back for renewals, or programs coming back for replacements because they're trying to meet more of the need that they have. Ohio's system is more reliant on property taxes than it ever has been. In 1991, just under half of property taxes were being paid by folks like us in this room, homeowners, farmers. But some things have happened since then. In 2006, the state decided they wanted to help incent more business creation, and so they reduced a portion of what businesses have to pay in property taxes. They changed what was included. Then in 2013, Governor Kasich was faced with all sorts of budget issues, so he decided to reduce some of the discounts that are given for residential and agricultural payers. And as of 2022, homeowners and farmers are now paying 2/3 of the property taxes that are collected. It would be nice if our property tax bills were lower. I would love that. But then we would probably either have to cut services or pay from somewhere else. Property taxes right now are 29% of all taxes that are collected in Ohio. The other main taxes that are collected are sales and income. Those are our choices. I want to talk a little bit about schools specifically because this is a big part of our property tax bill. And some of this comes from the fact of state choices, which drives reliance on local funding. I heard Superintendent Roberto give a speech at the end of February in the city of Aurora, and he mentioned that in 2011, 27.8% of funding for Aurora schools came from the state. Last year, it's down to 18%. So that difference is being made up by us. This is a picture of my property tax bill. 75% goes to the school. And all across Ohio, the picture is very similar. 60, 65, 70, 75%, depending on the exact makeup of the community you live in. This is the norm now, based on those decisions the state has made in funding. And it's probably going to keep going that direction, at least with the current outlook. The state has decided to expand voucher funding for private schools, and that'll, the pot's only so big, right? We saw the pie. That'll reduce funding available for public schools. So that's something we should all be prepared for. So that's the basic background. Thank you very much. Now that we're all on the same page with terms, I'll turn it over to Janice to lead a discussion with our experts.
Thank you, Margaret. I don't know, Mike, that this microphone was working, so our poor folks here in the audience. These are for our online viewers, and we have two of these, so you'll see us passing around these little microphones, and that's so our online viewers can also hear the answers, but hopefully we'll have microphones so that you here in the room too can hear it. Before we go any further, that presentation was amazing. On your seat, you had a little slip with QR code. We have the presentation as a PDF on our website. Feel free to go there. You can do that now. We wanted to make sure you had access to it, so if you had specific questions for our panelists, you knew, and you wanted to reference a slide, you could do that. We also have our website if you want to learn more about the different democracy dialogues that we have done in the past. We have them all there. We've covered all sorts of topics from the Electoral College, thank you, to inside the ballot box. We've talked about education funding in the past, but ranked choice voting. We have all sorts of topics. We hope you go to our website. But now that we have a microphone that works, I will bring up our panelists. So first, we'll start with our county level. Matt Kelly is our county auditor. I'm sure you've seen his name around on different documents coming to your house, whether you like it or not. So we'll have Matt Kelly come on up. We also have John Kennedy. He's our county treasurer. He's the person that you write those checks to. Thank you. But more locally, we have Tim Clymer, who's the Aurora finance director. So if you're in Aurora and you've seen road or park levies, or he's the guy that you can complain to about that. And then finally, we have Mike Roberto. He's the superintendent for Aurora schools, longtime superintendent, although he will be retiring soon, so maybe he'll be even more honest than he usually is, because he's retiring. No, but we expect this to be a very lively discussion. I am going to give each of the panelists a minute or two to, one, introduce yourself and your background or your role, and then also answer if there was anything in Margaret's presentation that you wanted to clarify or you just wanted folks to know. So I'm going to give you the mini microphone as well.
Thank you, Janice. How does this go on? Good? All right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As Janice said, my name is Tim Clymer. I'm the finance director for the city of Aurora. I've been there since 2016. I feel like out of everyone up here, you'll probably hear from me the least tonight. As you saw on the pie chart, about 7-8% of what you pay comes to the city. We are largely driven by the municipal income tax as a revenue source, that 2% charged on all wages and profits earned in the city. But the 7-8% that you pay towards the city constitutes maybe 7% of our revenue. Covers a couple operating levies that come to you every 5 years, one for our road and bridges, one for our firefighters and paramedics, and both are up next year and the year after. So we'll be talking about those more in the coming years. But thank you to the league for doing this. It is not a very fun topic, but certainly I feel like I'm surrounded by other nerds like myself that read the fine print on their mortgage statements and stuff. So I'm certainly at peace with you all. I appreciate you doing this. And the presentation they covered, I know municipal finance directors who don't have that level of knowledge in property taxes, not naming names, not around here, but you all are getting a great education tonight, and I applaud you for coming tonight as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to second that. Margaret did a great job presenting a pretty complicated topic, so kudos to her for the time that was put in the presentation. I'm Mike Roberto. I'm the superintendent here at Aurora. I have been in education for over 34 years, the last 5 of which I've been superintendent here. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that Margaret mentioned that we do have a levy coming up. It is a renewal. It's issue number 11. It's a 5.61 mil renewal operating levy. So the renewal part means that it's no new taxes, as you heard. It's kind of baked in, as she talked about. And the operating part means that it goes from anywhere from salaries to electricity to diesel for the buses and things like that. That has been a renewed 6 times since it first was on the ballot in 1990. So it's about every 5 years we come back and ask if you could still support the schools in that way, and it'll raise about $3.8 million as it did in 1990. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention there are several other school districts that are on the ballot as well. A very important one in Ravenna coming up, that's issue 12. A 5.47 new levy, and Streetsboro, issue 13, they also have a renewal levy. Mogador has a renewal levy at 5.93. Streetsboro is 5.0, by the way. Both of those are new levies. And then we have some Portage County residents that live in go to Springfield, and they have actually 2 renewal levies on. So I bring that up because, as you see, it seems like levies are always on the ballot, and this is no different this year in relation to that.
Thank you. Oh, do I need to hold that too? Oh, okay. I'm going to stand up. I hope that's okay. You don't have to stand up, Matt. So, Matt and I know a lot about the anger and the vibe. The vibe is not a good one when it comes to property valuations and then subsequent rises in everybody's property taxes. Matt's been dealing with it a little bit longer than I have. I've been on the case for the last 1.5 years. Personally, we've talked to thousands of people in forums like this, at county fairs, at all these different events. And to us, and I'm going to speak for Matt and it'll make him uncomfortable, but I think he agrees with me on this. There is no more important issue in the state of Ohio than reducing the property tax burden for all of you. There isn't. And especially, we carve out, especially for our seniors. Anybody, I don't see many people in here 65 or older. Not many. But, it's those folks who have been paying their property taxes on time for decades, doing the right thing, supporting the schools, supporting the community, and they're coming up to us and they're saying, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kelly, I can't afford to stay in my house. I might have to move. And, I've been living in this house since 1960. I want to die in this house, but I can't pay my property taxes because the valuation went up so much. How am I going to be able to afford this? What can you guys do? So I'm going to say this as well, and Matt can back me up on this. We're at the back end of the problem. We're at the back end. We're at the localist of the local levels. So we see it firsthand. We talk to people every single day. Every single day, Matt gets people in his office complaining about the valuation. This week, last week, we're going to have 600 folks, more than 600 folks, talking to us in what are called board of revision meetings. And they have 15 minutes to, it ends up being a lot more than 15 minutes, I will tell you, making their case as to why their property value is too high. And so we're dealing with the problem at the back end. We don't mind that. That's our job. That's our servant, being a public servant. That's what we're here to do. But damn it, why can't we solve this problem at the state level, at the front end? It's only been, 30 years, Matt? 30 years it's been ruled unconstitutional, the way that we finance schools in the state of Ohio. And what we're really good at is kicking the damn can down to the next session, the next folks who come in. And that ain't good enough. That is not good enough. So we wish we could solve the problem, but we cannot. We need our state lawmakers to stand up and do something. And my thing is, make it a priority. It should have been the first damn bill that was introduced this year. Should have been HB1, SB1. I know SB1 got known for something else, but it should be the priority, especially a carve-out for our seniors regarding homestead exemption. Holy crap, just do two things. Raise the income eligibility. Matt and I have publicly stated this. Raise the income so more people can qualify for it, and then why not just double the benefit? Double the benefit. Instead of $25,000 reduced off of your assessed value, make it $50,000. You know how many more seniors would go to sleep at night? Not worrying to death about how they're going to make ends meet? I could keep talking. but I'm going to hand it off to Matt. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Here, here's mine. All right, so between Margaret's presentation and what John said, that's pretty much all I was going to say. So no, really, I really appreciate events like this. Part of my philosophy, and I'll back up a second. I've been auditor for just over 2 years and learned a lot from Janet Esposito when she was retiring. Spent a lot of time with her learning about this kind of stuff, as well as all the other things that the auditor's office does. So that was important to me. Janet was a great teacher, and I'll never forget that. So it's an honor to be in this position. But part of that responsibility is coming to these events and being accessible, being transparent with the public, not just hiding behind a desk. And I'm not built that way anyways. I don't want to hide behind a desk or a computer or whatever it may be. I want to be out there in the public. As uncomfortable as the conversations typically are, and I've told this story a couple times, that the very first time that I went out there and started talking about property tax issues was down in Randolph Township, and I thought, okay, they wanted me to come down and talk. I just, high level, couple talking points, no big deal. We'll answer a few questions and move on. I got there just a few minutes late because I had a family issue, pulled in, and the parking lot was filled with a crowd, probably maybe just a little bit bigger than this, but something I didn't expect. Maybe I should have. But it was great. We talked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's the first time I was, kind of sensitive to it because I talked to other county auditors that have been through this before. Summit County, where my mom and dad lived, they went through this the year in 2023. So I heard from their side, but I also heard from other county auditors what they were going through. So But that was my first eyes on the process. Wow, people were really interested in that, which is good. If you've ever been to a township meeting, there's typically 3 or 4 people there.
Yeah.
And there was about 80 to 100 people at this particular one because they knew I was coming to talk about property taxes. So I say that I've been auditor for 2 years. I love what I'm doing. I have a wonderful staff. There's a lot of good things going on in the county, except the fact that we're dealing with this property tax issue in this county as well as all other 87 counties in the state of Ohio, right? As John said, we've been out to a lot of different venues like this, crowds like this. And the first, in my mind, the first thing to understand is exactly what that presentation was about. It's about educating ourselves on how the process works. House Bill 920 went into effect back in the mid-70s, and we talked about that in our conversations also. It was really, really good back then. It was really good for a number of years. It's outdated now, and we really need to fix stuff. All that complicated math up there that you saw, that's a lot of stuff going on. The 20 mil floor, the renewal, replacement, all those levies that are on, why schools have to do it all the time. That's a lot of complicated stuff. And I really honestly don't think it needs to be that necessarily complicated. Columbus is doing a few things. You know, they're trying to break up a big issue into smaller issues and try and fix those as they go. And we can talk about a few of those here in a few minutes. But, you know, my thing is we need to do something different. We can't sustain, as John said, I've been to people's houses that are afraid that they're just not going to be able to pay their taxes. I have my solutions that I think will work. I'm not a state legislator, and I'm certainly not somebody that can wave a magic pen and make that happen. I can complain, and I have worn our state representatives' ear. I've worn them out. Trust me, I've been in their ear a lot, saying, here's what I'm hearing from the public. Here's what I think. Here's what the County Auditors Association of Ohio is thinking. So we've given them ideas. Are we going to get to a place one day where property taxes, you know, we feel good about paying for the services the property taxes pay for, but we're not paying so much that we're afraid that we're going to lose our house? There has to be a balance there. And there's a lot of smart people in Columbus. There's a lot of smart people throughout the state of Ohio that I think we can get to a solution, but we got to get there quick. We can't wait another 50 years to get to some kind of a solution. If we do nothing now, and I said, if you've been at one of these events that John and I have been to throughout the county, if we don't do anything now, in 5 years, it was 6 before the turn of the year, in 5 years, the auditor's office, no matter if I'm in office or if somebody else is the auditor of the county, will have to go through the county and assess your property again. And I'm pretty much telling you the market's probably not going to go down from now until then. So we're going to be doing the same exact thing in 5 years. Everybody know what the definition of insanity is, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and trying to get a different result. We need to do something now on this. And if we don't, and we have solutions, we've given solutions to our state representatives. Are they doing some stuff? They're doing a lot more than kicking the can, as John said, that they have the past 30 years since it's been found unconstitutional, the funding formula for schools. So yes, they're doing stuff. What we can't let up on is staying on our state representatives and making sure they hear our voice. Yes. It's one thing to hear from the county auditor, superintendents, treasurers, it's one thing to hear from them. They expect to hear from us. It's a much more powerful thing when they hear from people around the state, around the county, saying, look, I'm afraid I'm going to be taxed out of my house because we're not doing anything in Columbus on this. So again, I'll say I'm learning as we go on this. That was probably the best presentation that I've seen. And I've seen a lot of presentations on property taxes. So I applaud you for that. That was really good. Very simple and easy to understand. So that was good, especially the terminology. So with that, I'll sit down and of course, take any questions. So thank you.
All right, so let's talk about how questions. Let's talk about how we'll do questions. In a way, it's to help with our live stream audience, and a way to make sure that I can speak out the questions. We also will group questions of similar topics together. But if you have a question, raise your hand. Our Interact students will hand you a note card. Once you've written your question, raise your hand again. They'll collect it. They'll bring it to one of our league members. We'll gather it, and then they'll bring it up to me. And so I will ask. I have some questions already. I do want to say these folks did see our presentation ahead of tonight, because we wanted to make sure that we were being factually but correct with what Margaret was presenting, but I did not share any of my questions with them. So I have a few queued up, but I'm certainly open to getting your questions as soon as we can. We don't have to wait. If you have a question, write it down. He'll bring it up to me right away. let's start with questions, and I'm at the risk of letting these two bulls loose. I am going to start with Mr. John Kennedy because you did have a pretty fiery letter to the editor.
Me?
A half-baked idea was part of that, talking about the failure of the state legislature to do something at that level and instead bringing it back down locally. So you did reference in your letter that you did have some solutions, including significant property tax relief to seniors, amending the homestead exemption. Tonight you talked about raising income eligibility, doubling the benefit.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
I want you to look again in a minute or two, because we have a but talk a little bit more about that, but also at the risk of losing what? Because if you're taking money away from this pot, where or how is it added up? Is it into income tax? Is it into sales tax? And if so, what would that mean?
Wow, talk about teeing one up for me. I'm glad my wife, Mary Beth, is not here right now to hear me kind of go off on this. But yeah, I was a little ticked off. And if that came through, so be it. That was about when I learned that lawmakers down in Columbus were playing around with an idea. I thought it was a bad idea to sneak into the budget, the 2-year state budget. I thought it was a cop-out to say, hey, look, property taxes are a difficult issue, and maybe we can have you look over here, let the county folks kind of sort it out. Not our problem. We're still working on stuff. To be fair to Matt, we're still working on. They could still come up with a solution on property tax relief. For example, to do something to amend the homestead exemption, which I talked about before. To me, it's pretty damn simple. Raise eligibility, right? Get more people in the universe of folks who can collect, 65 and older. Double the benefit. You keep a lot of people in their homes. If you just did those two things, how the hell do you pay for it? Well, you're in Columbus for a reason, right? And Matt and I have talked about this. State budgets are what? Any budget is what? A reflection of what we value. Think about that. It's as simple as that, isn't it? What do we value in the state of Ohio? Oh, I talk too much. So, let me take yours. Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me now. Okay. So yeah, you could take care of this problem by just tackling those two things. To me, that's simple enough to do. But instead, I thought it was a trick to look over here, let the budget commissions at the county level, which Matt and I sit on, so I have to be somewhat nice right now, but let us be the ones to say, oh, Ravenna Public School District, you've got extra money, which you don't, and I think I'm a better steward of how you're spending your money than you are, Ravenna, or Aurora, or Crestwood. I'm going to make a decision at the county level to claw back some of that extra carryover money you have. Sorry, I'm calling BS on that. That makes it seem as though there's just a lot of extra cash that these public schools have that they're just wasting. They're throwing it away. Oh, the administrative costs are so high. We're spending way too much money. Show me the numbers. Show me the numbers on all of that. Anyway, to me, that was like, you're just playing tricks. If you were damn serious about this problem, you would deal with it by amending an existing law, and you would do that yesterday. How many people do we have to talk to and take the heat from at the local level before you listen to us? The definition of insanity is complaining and complaining and complaining and electing the same folks who are going to keep kicking the can down the road. Sorry.
All right, John, I'm going to...
All right, stop. All right.
because we do have several
All right.
questions that seem to
Yep.
tie into this. And
All right.
I want to
Very
give
good.
Matt a chance to talk. Use the microphone as well. But folks are saying, all right, so you guys are calling down. One, they're wondering how often are you calling and talking with your state legislatures and folks in Columbus? And then two, what do you want these folks? What sort of talking points should we have if we're calling down Columbus?
Yeah, so I either meet face-to-face, text, or phone call with our state representatives probably 2 to 3 times a week. Just about because I hear, obviously, I hear things all the time, so I want them to know what people in the county are thinking, or what the feedback is, what the complaints are. So I just had lunch with Heidi Workman here last week. I talked to Steve Demetriou a couple times. We see each other at events, and this there's the most talked about subject at any political event right now is property taxes. Doesn't matter what party you're there for. So I'm communicating what I'm hearing, which it's one thing for me to say what my opinion is or what I think. My property value went up 30%. I live down in Suffield. Field School District is my school district. So I'm seeing exactly what everybody else is seeing. I'm no different. I'm not immune to any of this. So I can talk from an auditor standpoint. I can talk from a private citizen standpoint. I mentioned my mom and dad living in Summit County. I can speak from there. They're retired on a fixed income, so I'm sensitive to that also. I'm a veteran. The Homestead Act, or the Homestead Exemption, when we first start talking about that, I would think that that's an easy one. When you start talking about replacing what you're gonna, if you press on the balloon, so to speak, like, okay, if we're gonna forego some property taxes, and how do you fill that gap? It's either starting to look at spending, which that's okay, that's an argument, or how do you fill that gap? Well, I'll tell you right now, and I've said it before in other groups, is that you don't have to like the fact that Ohio has recreational marijuana right now, but we have it, and the voters voted for it, and that can be taxed. That's not the silver bullet, but that's a piece of the puzzle. The same thing with legal sports gambling. You can get on your phone right now and gamble on the Cavs game, or the Cavs playoffs games coming up here pretty soon. You don't have to like legal gambling in the state of Ohio, but it's here. The voters voted on it. Let's tax it. Not a silver bullet, but it's a piece of the puzzle. The more revenue streams we can bring in to replace or relieve property taxes, the better. Income tax, sin tax. If I want to pay double for a six-pack than what I'm paying now, that's my choice. And I will go pay that, or I won't, but it's a choice. So that's one thing to look at. So it's all about pressing on that balloon, and if we're going to forgo property taxes or give people relief, we need to find where that funding goes or reduce the amount of spending. That's got to be looked at with a very, very critical eye. But first and foremost, when we talk about what I think is most important as far as property taxes, it's that homestead exemption. 65 and older, that age group has paid into their community. Not that they probably won't need fire or police services or the library, all the things that property taxes pay for, but the amount that they're paying, the same as somebody with 3 or 4 kids in school, there needs to be a reduction, or in this case, more of an exemption and more of them eligible on the income level. Just think of it, and the income is capped, I think, right now at 40 grand. If you were responsible through your life, and let's just say you paid into an IRA for 20, 25 years or something like that, and now you made all the right decisions and you're pulling in an income of $41,000 or $50,000, whatever, off that IRA, you're not eligible for the homestead exemption. You did all the right things throughout your life, what you were told to do, and now you're pulling that income in and you're not eligible. It's 65 or older for an exemption through the Homestead Exemption Act. Veterans, disabled veterans, there's a percentage that they're eligible for. I think it should be lowered. If you're 50% disabled as a veteran, you serve the country. I mean, I'm a veteran. I look and I hear veterans. I'm very active in the veteran community here in Portage County, and they deserve for what they've done. They deserve more than what they're getting right now out of that homestead exemption. Yes. So that piece of legislation is a very, very powerful thing that when I talk about calling down or contacting your state representatives, they've heard this from me, and they can hear it time and time again. I'll keep saying until we do something about the homestead exemption that I think that's an important piece. Now, I'll say in all fairness, it's been brought up. It's been brought up to, down in Columbus, they're talking about it. But again, I'm sensitive to the fact that we've been talking about things for the last 30 years. I'm very results oriented. So what are the results of our decisions? We're living the results of our decisions right now. And again, if I'm in office in 6 years, we will be sending appraisers out to your house to do evaluation Hopefully, our process in the state has changed to where it gives relief more to the people that we're talking about right now.
All right, I'm going to bring the next questions to our local guys because I didn't want you to feel like I was leaving long. But I guess, so Mike, we're talking about state funding towards public education has been reduced. They took away the cup formula, whatever, yeah. We have the Ed Choice vouchers, pulling funds away. So you're looking at putting levies on. When do you decide whether you're going for a replacement or renewal? How do you, as a superintendent or working with the school board, make that type of decision?
So, one of the things that we're required to do is create a 5-year forecast. So we look ahead to see how much money that we have, and you got the chance to see how schools are funded. So with House Bill 920, there's a set amount of money that comes in, and once that money comes in, you almost have to, it's almost like a checkbook. You have to balance it and be sure that you're going to make it to the end of the month. What our goal is to make it to the end of 5 years. So as we see that, we look at our cash carryover from year to year, and as we see that start to go down, we start to eat into that sort of savings at that point, and we look to see if we can make it to that. By the time we get to that 5th year, we need to have about, 60 days worth of cash on hand to be able to pay our bills and things like that. When we see that that's not going to happen, that's when we start to look at something like that in terms of putting a levy back on. That is an operating levy. Bond issues are a completely different thing, which Margaret addressed and things like that. So that's one of the biggest pieces, and that's happening more and more because the dollar doesn't stretch as far. And to give you a quick example, that renewal levy that we have up, it's $3.8 million levy that will come in, and
Clearly, we need more operating funds
for batteries. So it's working. Thank you. Just shut off on me. And so that $3.8 million was the same $3.8 million in 1990. Well, the dollar doesn't have the same buying power as it did in 1990. It's about 48 cents for every dollar today in that sense. So we're talking about that $3.8 million is more like a $1.8 million renewal, and so it doesn't last nearly as long as what it did back in 1990. I think that the other piece, and before I give the microphone back this way, I'm going to say something while I can, is I want to talk about the property tax piece in terms of how it impacts schools, because I honestly believe the property tax is almost like a symptom rather than the cause of the issues. And people point towards schools when they see that pie chart and say, oh, 75% of my property taxes are going towards schools. Schools must be not spending money accordingly. Right. We told you a little bit about how we do that. But it's a symptom. No different than, think about it this way. If we all had like a fever and we need to take a high fever, we need to address that and take fever-reducing medication. So we do, because it needs to be addressed. But we would never think that fever-reducing medication is all we needed to do. We need antibiotics to take care of whatever the cause of that fever was. It's a symptom of something bigger. High property taxes are a symptom of something bigger. Yes. We can do something, and we need to do something about property taxes, just like that high fever. And I love the two ideas that we have here in relation to the homestead piece from there. There are 20 other ideas down in Columbus. Some are better than others in relation to that, but you can't look to change the property tax and expect to cure the issue. The issue, as I see it, is that over the years, and you alluded to this, and so did the presentation, we have gotten less and less funding from the state, which puts more and more on local communities for that. That's why it was ruled unconstitutional in 1997 of how schools were funded. And since that point, actually it happened 4 different times, it was ruled unconstitutional. We have just increased, as you saw, the amount of pressure on local communities. I will say just a couple other things is that, so that's one of the causes from there. We have in Ohio, when we talk about state support for the revenue of school districts, we rate 45th out of 50 states in terms of supports. we are highly dependent on local communities rather than the state taking its share. And as we said, it's gotten worse over that time. So that's one of the pieces that I think that could be changed from there. So definitely we need to address property taxes. But please remember, like a fever, you have to reduce it, but it can't be the only thing that's going on. The other piece is that House Bill 920. And alluding to that, just quickly, that we are the only state in the nation that has a system like this. Michigan and Missouri had something like it, and they got off of it when they realized that it's not a great plan. And it is the most restrictive property tax limitation in the country. And so it would be ideal if, I had a magic wand or a pen or anything like that, that we look at House Bill 920 because it doesn't account for any inflationary growth, that we put a little bit of a safety valve in there. So those $3.8 million from 1990, maybe they're a little bit worth more than $1.8 million now for school. So we would not have to come back as often for that. And I could go on, but I will pass the things on because there's other things to talk about as well.
So Tim, I'm going to come to you. Time to take So Aurora's a growing community. When do you as a city say we have to, inside millage is only going to go so far for the increased stress on our police, on our fire, on our roads? When and how do those conversations happen, and when is the levy put up?
Sure. So when it comes to property taxes, I kind of talked on this earlier. Property tax makes up about 7% of our total revenue. 81% is income tax. So that component, we are fortunate to not have a limitation. Every year we traditionally see some organic growth in that number. Past 5 years it has grown by about $1 million a year. So fortunately, to compensate for the growth, we have the growing income tax. That's our lifeblood revenue source for our operations. So the property taxes, we haven't really been forced to go that direction for additional revenue. Many, many years ago, we came out with the road and bridge levy and the fire and paramedic levies. And those are important to the city. Road and bridge collects shy of $600,000. That goes towards our road paving program. Usually it costs around $1.5 million to do that program. So that levy enables us to get another 50% purchasing power for our roads, the roads and streets. And I think the administration is proud of the condition of our roads, and especially if you compare to some other cities, I think we stack up well. And then on the fire paramedic side, we raise about $1 million a year. That covers the cost of 4 full-time firefighters, our cyclical replacements of ambulances, and the purchase of some equipment too. Generally, we have a total of 20 full-time firefighters. We try to keep 6 to 7 on staff at any time. That's for best practices for response, but also it helps with the ISO insurance ratings. The 4 firefighters covered by that levy would knock us down about 1.25 off that 6 to 7. So that keeps us where we are at to help everyone's insurance costs through the insurance ratings and help with the level of protection we're able to offer with that department. We're fortunate as costs grow, we lean on the income tax really to help bridge that gap. So we do rely on our operating levies, and we do try to continue to renew them, but fortunately we don't see a need in the near future to come out with any additional levies.
Now, I'm not going to call out Aurora, because I know this happens throughout Portage County, throughout Ohio, throughout the nation, where businesses get tax abatements because the idea is, well, you'll get the income tax from the workers at those businesses. Who within the city of Aurora would make that type of decision? Is that a you call? Is that an administration? Who makes that decision?
Sure, very collective. Certainly the mayor leads that process. We need council approval for any abatement. The city has 3 abatement zones. One was created, the industrial park area, back before 1994, so that's grandfathered under some rules that basically require automatic approval of an eligible abatement request. The other 2 zones, one in the historic center part of town and then another out near Geauga Lake, those are newer zones, so those are a reduced abatement that we could offer without going to the schools. And we review each application case-by-case basis for those areas. Obviously, income tax comes into play. If an abatement or a new construction is large enough, I think we're at $2 million now for the threshold, the school district is eligible for a cut of those income taxes on that business. So they're not totally empty-handed. And the prevailing sentiment is an abated property or abated construction otherwise would not have come to the city. So it helps create a pipeline of additional property valuation to hit in 12, 15 years when that abatement dries up.
Very good. All right, so we did get a question about the Brown Stadium. When it talked, thinking about how some of the money from our taxes is going towards that situation. Do we as taxpayers, how is that impacting what happens here locally? I mean, it's going to the grounds, totally different county, totally different footprint, but still it's part of our taxes going there rather than coming back to our schools or going. Who do we talk to or call if we're angry about that?
Turn it on. There you go.
There.
Just keep passing.
See, I brought this up at an event here about a month or so ago at the American Legion in Kent, and that's when it first was announced that I think $600 million was going to be used to build the Browns Stadium. I'm a Browns fan. I love it. I love the old stadium. I love the new stadium. But when you start talking about the context of $600 million, and that's in the budget that's coming up for a vote. Right. And I don't know all the details. So all I'm saying is on the surface, that doesn't look really good, that $600 million is going to go into a sports stadium. And we're sitting here having events like this talking about how we're struggling with school, funding schools, fire. That's one point I'll make is whenever I get to township meetings, almost always the number one issue they bring up is funding of their fire departments. These rural townships, and most of them are policed by the sheriff's office, but they have to have their emergency response, and that comes up also. So I have these things in the back of my head when I hear, oh, we're going to commit $600 million to a Brown Stadium. Okay, I get the business growth, and there could be other events up there, and all the good things that are going to go along with that, which I'm sure most of it's true, and maybe it will generate some money. I also heard that it's going to be largely paid for through a bond issue, I believe, is how they're going to pay for that. So theoretically, it's basically asking the voters for permission or asking the budget for permission to put that bond issue on, and then it would pay for it after a certain amount of years. So you can look at it that way, put that spin on it. I just, in this day and time, do we need a $600 million stadium up in Cleveland? And I know a few people around that area that are for it and against it, so I've heard both sides of the story. But right now, I mean, when you prioritize things, I think we look at what our priorities are. We need to clean our house as far as how we fund schools, police, fire locally, like really locally, not like Northeast Ohio locally, like Portage County and the other 87 counties locally. And then let's talk about those luxury items. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
And I'll just amplify everything that Matt said. He's absolutely right. To fully fund Cup-Patterson, which is supposed to fix the funding formula for public schools, right? It would take 800 million, not mils. 800 million, right? Well, from what I understand, in the current budget, it's now been slashed from 800 mil to fully fund Cup-Patterson to 200 mil. Well, do the quick math on that. Do the quick math. 600 mil. Again, state budgets are what? A reflection of what we value, right? Do we value the Cleveland Browns Stadium? I love my Brownies. Don't get me wrong. Do we value the Cleveland Browns new stadium more than providing a property tax break for our seniors? Is that what we're saying? Is that what we're saying? That's all. So just think about that. Again, the common denominator tonight, the common message I want you to take away with is you've got to contact your state lawmakers. You all collectively have agency in fixing the problem. It's not all on you, but collectively we can have our voices heard. We can. We can. So we have to be active citizens, right? Citizens. We've got to really get engaged on this.
Can I talk about that 600 for a second? All right, so besides the Browns, don't forget now the Bengals are also asking for money. So when you give them some muscle. But that 600 million, John had alluded to 800 million more would be needed to fund the Fair School Funding Plan. That's the Patterson that Jim talked about. That plan would actually make school funding constitutional should it be fully funded the way that it's set up. Instead of raising another 800 million to do that, the lawmakers have decided that public school kids would get about 250 million. Sounds pretty close to 600 million. However, I also want to say that they instead are also increasing the amount of voucher money, that's public school money going towards for private individuals, by about 500 million, not quite 600 million, but in my eyes, I see the gap right there. So when we talk about not being able to fully fund schools at that 800 million, dropping it down to 250, that difference of 500 million extra going towards the voucher system, that's on top, so that's extra on top of the 970 million that was put in this past year. So we're over $1 billion at the state, city of the state of the schools, state of the city. I had mentioned that we were nearly $1 billion. This will take us over that $1 billion amount right there. And I think that is an important number for people to hear as well, because those are public dollars going to approximately 10% of the population, over 80%, 85% of our public school kids in Ohio go to public schools, I should say. So.
Now, I do want to talk about issue 2, which is also a bond issue, but it's different than the 600 million going for Brown Stadium in terms of bonds. This was a bipartisan push through the legislature to put it onto the ballot. $250 million for roads projects, I believe, but it's something that's been done before in Ohio. So do any of you want to talk about any pro-con for issue 2? What? John Kennedy. I'm just going to make folks issue 2. Well, I will also say that if you get the Portager, happen to get this issue, it does have the League of Women Voters Voter Guide, which does have both the pro and con side for issue 2. So if you'd like to learn more information about issue 2, you can go to our voter guide. It's also online at our website, and you can also go to vote411.org before any election to get the League of Women Voters Voter Guide, which will have candidate responses as well as issues of pro-con on all the issues on your ballot statewide. Wow, again, I'm stunned.
We can talk about issue 11 if you want.
What's issue 11?
It's the Aurora schools.
Well, so the Board of Revisions, you talked about the Board of Revisions meetings. Who's a part of that? And when someone goes to a Board of Revisions meeting, how do they get an answer right away? Or what does that look like?
Okay, this is a good time for me to bring up the process that we go for board revision, but we also, if you back up to September, we also have what we're called informal hearings. And there's no requirement for an auditor's office to do that, but it's a very good, what I learned from talking to other auditors and just the general public that was going to have to experience this, is that we need to do something beforehand, before the official board of revision hearing point in time, which is going on right now. The Board of Revision is made up of the treasurer, a representative of the treasurer's office, John's office, my office, and the commissioner's office. And they review appeals for property values that come in. So that's what's going on right now. So let me back up to September. We did a very similar process called informal hearings, where people could come in, bring their documentation, and say, you valued my house at $100,000. I'm telling you that it's not, and here's my documentation. The property card on the auditor's website is incorrect. We had a deck, we took it off, so we no longer have a deck. Our square footage, whatever issues are incorrect with that valuation can be brought up in that informal hearing appeal. We'll take a look at it and make an adjustment. Around 30 to 35% of people that appealed in the informal hearing process got an adjustment on their property value. Now I'll say this, the other 60 to 65% probably just came in, and I'm not saying everybody, so this is a blanket statement, but most of them came in and just said, my property's not worth what you said. Okay, well then tell me why. You have to walk me through that. And I know there's a complaint out there that says, well, why should we have to tell you why it's not worth that? Because I have what the appraisers that we have, I have a lot of confidence in the team that goes around and does our eyes-on appraisal. So I get a lot of criticism on this, but I'm going to tell you how it works. And are they perfect? Absolutely not. None of us are, but there's a process to make sure we fill any gaps. Every 6 years, the appraisal company, which we use Integrity Appraisal, I know these guys very well. Personally, they come into the office, they communicate, we have a good relationship with them. They're certified, they're licensed, they have to do continuing education, they are very good at what they do. And oh, by the way, they've been with Portage County for years. So they know the county, they know the commercial properties, the residential properties, and so forth and so on. I'm confident they're doing a very, very good job. When they come in with a value is likely what the fair market value, as Margaret said in her presentation, that's where you get your fair market value from. Almost always they're pretty darn close. Now, just to fact check that, because I'm a new auditor, I want to make sure that I'm thinking correctly and I'm kind of fact checking, is I went out and talked to 6 realtors around Portage County, 5 or 6 realtors that have a lot of experience, a lot of years of doing realty work. And every single realtor said that our appraisals were probably low compared to what they would start putting houses on the market for. So just take that for what it's worth. I fact checked it. That's what they said. Just going on what very experienced people are telling me. Okay. Now, we had the informal hearings. About 30 to 35% of the people got adjustments on their property valuation. So then we have kind of a lull in the action. Catch your breath. We're coming into the board of revision hearing, which started March 31st is when you had to have your paperwork in if you're going to appeal officially to the state of Ohio through our office, through the board of revision process. And we're going through that right now. We had about 600, in between 600 and 650 appeals put through the board of revision. Some of those we're able to take care of over the phone. Very easy process. Said, okay, yep, check the box there. Good. Okay, we'll get back with you. Within a couple days, you should get a letter in the mail on a decision whether you get an adjustment or not. Doesn't mean you're going to get an adjustment, but rest assured that we are looking at exactly all the points, the data points that we need to look at. John's on the committee. I haven't been able to sit on it. It just started up last week, but I'm going to start sitting on a few of the meetings here coming up. And Matt Adelman, who runs my real estate department in the auditor's office, very experienced at what he does and trained and knows what to look at. And I believe it's a good process. And it's the law, so we have to do it that way. But at Portage County, I think we have a very good process to get a fair valuation if it deserves an adjustment or not. Now, I've gotten threats that I've had to have investigated, that my house isn't worth this, and you're cursed, and I'm coming after you and your family. There's no place for that, right? I mean, let's have a conversation about how to change what we're doing. All this stuff that we just talked about in that presentation, that's how we live right now. It's very complicated. Let's change it to make it a little easier. The last point I'll make is when people come up and say my house isn't worth what it's worth. Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, and then tell me why, and we go through that whole conversation. Now tell me how much it's worth if you're going through a refinancing and you want it reappraised. And I've had people tell me I want it as high as possible for a refinance. I want it as low as possible for my property taxes. That is an indication of how screwed up where we're at right now. I shouldn't say screwed up. I don't want to be negative about it. But that's an indication of there's kind of a duality of, my house for me is one of my biggest investments. Yep. If you told me 3 years ago that your biggest investments can increase by 32% over the course of the next 3 years, I'd be ecstatic. Except the property taxes are associated with that, right? So think about it that way. Like the value of our houses, we keep them nice. Let's mow our lawn, edge our sidewalks, plant flowers, whatever. And you just got a 32% increase in your value across the county on average, awesome. Oh shoot, taxes are associated with that. How do we fix that? Yeah. So that's what you got to look at.
Yeah. I'll let you talk.
I won't. I promise I'm not going to talk too long. I love working with our county auditor. I don't know if you guys know that. I love Matt Kelly. I love Matt Adelman. I love the folks in the auditor's office. They do great work. Great work. And I can't say that enough. And I've been part of most of these meetings, these board of revision. A lot of folks from Aurora have come down to Ravenna to contest their valuation. That is for sure. And another thing, and Matt knows this, most of the folks coming to see us are 65 and older. And we've got a record number, or close to a record number. I think it's a record, 600 and some of these board revision hearings scheduled. That's wonderful. That's great. That's not a great indicator, is it? I would love to see 200. And if we fix the problem, again, the front end, if we fix the problem at the front end down in Columbus, we're not going to have to schedule 650 appointments with ticked off seniors, right? So let's fix it.
All right. Next question is back to you, Mike. What do you think is the end game for public education? This might be me because you're retiring. Now, what do you think really is the end game when it comes to funding of our public schools? At some point, is it going to be a tipping point where, I don't know, all public schools are privatized? I mean, that's impossible because there's not private schools close to all of them. I'm over in Hiram Township. So, I mean, it would be a 20-minute, 30-minute drive to get to any, maybe longer to get to a private school. So, but what is an end game for public school systems in Portage County? Or a Ravenna, or a Waterloo, or Southeast, or Crestwood, or where's the consolidation? What do you see as a superintendent?
Well,
sorry, should you turn off the lights?
Yeah, no, I'm an optimist, but it's hard to be optimistic in the climate that we are for public schools. And so I'll use the Aurora example just quickly, and then let people decide themselves about
it's a sign for maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, I'll let people decide kind of how that works together. So, as an example, in Aurora, and this was given partially on the presentation, that in 2011, that's the year that I was a principal over at the high school, that we did get 27.8% of our revenue from the state. We were also rated as the highest you could be on our state report card for that particular period of time. And the state report card changes over a period of time, but it was excellent with distinction. Okay, so 4 years later, 2015, we were rated all A's. They changed the report card, but it's as high as you could get from there. And again, our revenue went from 27.8 down to 24%. As a superintendent, the first year that I was there, this year, let's just use this year as an example, we have earned 6 stars. Changed the system again, but it was the highest rating. 5 stars, rather, on all 5 components for the 3rd year in a row. Only one of 6 school districts out of over 600 in the state that have earned that. And we earned 18. And our reward was 18.1% revenue from the state in terms of being support. So we can have a solid school district, and there are lots of solid school districts around. There's lots of communities that are supporting their schools. We all find value in our schools. No matter what district you're in, there's pride that's there, there's value that's there. Heck, we're supporting most of it anyway. We're not getting the same support from the state as we've done over there. But the reason why I say that is we can be as solid as we want to be. And I use the analogy, metaphor, of a mansion out in California where if you ever seen after a storm, hurricane, it's on the edge of a cliff, and the mansion is this big, beautiful mansion that has got this big, strong foundation that it's on. That's our school district. But that hill that has been slowly rolled away underneath that mansion, that's public education. And what's happening is it's getting eroded away. And slowly, it doesn't matter how well that mansion has been built, no matter how solid your public education district is, school district is, it's going to eventually collapse. It's just the support is not there. And that's one example. In Portage County, there are 6 school districts that are on the 20-mil floor. The 20-mil floor without getting too much into the details, because I talk about a whole another piece there, it's like 2% of your district property value that all districts are supposed to get. It's a minimum amount of funding that's there. One of the things that are suggested down in Columbus, one of the bills, is to get rid of the 20-mil floor. We've got Waterloo, Crestwood, Rootstown, Southeast, Windham, James A. Garfield school districts. They're all on the floor. If you were to get rid of that, I mean, that's, in fact, they're now on 2/3 of school districts out of those 611, over 400, so that's about 2/3. they're on that 20 mil floor, and 84% of those folks are small, rural, and struggling economically in some areas, poor areas. That 20% middle floor they're talking about, that's like the minimum. That's like the poverty floor that you're allowing schools to drop below. So that's another piece of evidence that's there. So you asked me to make a prediction. I'll let you make your own conclusions based on some of the evidence that's happening all around us. And that's factual information to share.
All right, for the next, as we wrap up this, is there anything you thought I was going to ask you that I didn't? Is there anything you thought I was going to ask that I didn't? Or is there anything else you'd like to say in conclusion to our audience?
No, nothing here. I appreciate these opportunities. And I'm certainly grateful to the partnership the city has with our schools and with our county leadership.
Now, I'll just say I appreciate the opportunity to share because I think, I'm surprised. I think education's powerful, and knowledge is power in that sense. I will say, these gentlemen, as I mentioned it before, the legislators are tired of hearing from people like me and people like them. So I encourage you to reach out because when they hear from you folks, that's when the wheels get turning a little bit more and the radar goes up a little bit more from that side. I sound a little bit more like, the Charlie Brown teacher or something like that from them right now. So.
Well, thanks for having us. Again, I'll just restate this. There is no more important issue in the state of Ohio than providing property tax relief, especially for our seniors. Especially for our seniors. So again, let's take care of the folks who have taken care of us all these years. How we fund it, how we finance it, we can figure that piece out, can't we? We can figure it out. So thank you.
So I guess what I want to say is I think it's important to be transparent and be able to communicate. So a few things, if you were at the Aurora 4th of July parade last year, I was there with a team that was handing out information on property taxes and what was coming up. We were at the Portage County Fair, had a booth there right when the letters came out. So you talk about a hostile crowd one day, which was fine. We knew that was coming. That's what I signed up for. I wanted to make sure people knew what was going on. We had a booth on the street at the Ravenna Balloon Affair, and then we were at one other event that we were at the auditor's office was basically out there on the street. I don't say that just that we had a sign out there saying, yep, we're the auditor's office. We had the laptop out there. We had documentation. We had, information we could give out and make sure that we scheduled appointments for people to come in and do things like the homestead exemption, sign up for it. I can't tell you how many people that are eligible for the homestead exemption came and thought they were on it, but when we looked them up, they weren't. And we signed them up for it. There's a few other pieces of information they had to bring in. But as a community, I think it's important that we take care of our neighbors. If you know somebody like that, make sure that they can do something as simple as call my office and ask, am I on the homestead exemption? They might have been on and it fell off. Whatever happened, it's okay to keep checking on that. So you will see my office out there. We'll probably be at the 4th of July parade again this year, handing out updated information on what House bills are out there, maybe just kind of a high level, here's what's going on. I just think it's very important to get that information out there so that you all know what's going on down in Columbus, so you can make that phone call and be informed and have the information to be able to maybe change a vote, maybe encourage a vote, whatever it may be. So don't hesitate to reach out to my office. If you see us out there on the street, give us your feedback. I can take tough conversations. I've had plenty of them over the past year and a half. It's fine. And a compliment's nice every now and then too for the staff. But my point is that we're out there, we're in the public. That's what elected officials should be doing. If we're not doing that, you don't see us, call me out on it. We will be out there. But I'm confident that we're out there and we're getting the information out there to you all.
So we did have one late question come on. And since I have a few extra minutes, I do want to ask. Somebody asked who decides to put something new on the ballot? So who up for a vote for the public? So when it comes to the school district, Board of Education, when it comes to mental health recovery board, the library system, Who would put that up? Is that the county commissioners who decide that, or who decides that goes up?
For those two entities, I believe it's the board for each of those two entities that decides to put it on there.
Okay. Is there a time when the county commissioners put something on the ballot? I can't think of anything but just.
I don't know what the timeline is
I don't
on
know.
that.
Concern.
License plate tax,
Hmm.
that was on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to thank you all. Thank all the folks that are here in the room. Thank all the folks who are watching us online. Again, if you'd like to watch this, it'll be on our Facebook channel. It'll be on our YouTube channel. We also have all of our previous ones you'll be able to see on our YouTube channel, as well as on our website, the presentations that we had done previously, like Margaret's amazing one. You'll be able to find that on our website. Please remember, there is an election happening right now. And if you are a voter here in Portage County, we are one of the 47 counties who have to use a paper poll book. Why am I telling you that? Because you're so used to walking in and us having those poll pads and taking your driver's license and getting you through within 30 seconds and handing you your ballot. It's going to be a little different. But I know we're all seasoned voters. We remember what it's like to see those giant books and signing our name in a book. It's going to be that way for this election. Hopefully by November, that won't be the case, but I want to make sure you build it into your day to know that the lines may be a little bit longer. So for all of us poll workers, it's not our fault. We're doing our best. Please be kind, but make sure you go out and vote. Thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you.